Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of the Bible. So tonight, hey Alex, good to see you. Tonight we're going to get into a really interesting topic. By the way, if you missed last week's, I want to encourage you to catch up on that. Tonight we're going to talk through working for justice without losing your heart. Galatians 6:9 says, "So let us not grow weary of doing what is good, for if we don't give up, we will in due time reap the harvest." Don't grow weary in doing good. One translation actually says, "And let us not lose heart in doing good." And this is not talking about being physically tired. The Greek phrase actually can be translated to be loosed out of myself. So when doing good, the warning is don't be loosed out of yourself. We can actually become disconnected from our own heart when doing good things. And what that means is we can become separated or disconnected from who we are designed to be. Hey, Nicole, great to see you. Shabbat Shalom in Costa Rica. Good work encompasses actually a lot of things. But tonight the good work we're talking about is the work of justice. Now, this is a very broad definition, and we all probably would define it differently, but I really like Dr. Cornel West's definition, which is justice is what love looks like in public. That's a really great definition. And this work of justice involves matters of the heart. As Zen Buddhist minister, author, and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh says, until we are able to love and take care of ourselves, we cannot be of much help to others. So there are actually many factors in the work of justice that undermine this really important truth of self-care that protects our heart. The work of justice, as you may know, is vast and it's unrelenting. And we fight with a perseverance against all kinds of things. Racism, climate change, homophobia, gender inequality, xenophobia, poverty, violence. Injustice abounds. And the emotional toll can really be exhausting. But what we have to remind ourselves in all good work, the ends do not justify the means. In the battle for justice, the way we fight and make change matters. Because we can lose our hearts if we march over the very values we are fighting for. We can become what we're actually trying to change. Louis Cortez, great to see you. Hey, Evelyn, good to see you. Not sure if you're with Miss Gwen or not. If we know that what we are doing is countering the unethical, that is empowering. But if we know that what we are doing is unethical, that is actually soul destroying. Unethical meaning against our own values. Turning into the very hatred and anger and judgmentalism that we are fighting against can steal our heart if we're not careful. Sometimes if we listen to ourselves talk, tragically, we may not sound any different than the haters we're trying to resist. Most of you know some 30 years ago, my husband and I and our two babies at the time left a comfortable lifestyle in the burbs of South Jersey Shore to move to an underserved area of Brooklyn, Bushwick, Brooklyn. And at the time, there was a lot of crime. There was a lot of injustice. There was a lot of poverty, a lot of violence, a lot of tragedy. And we dealt with that every single day. And we joined a ministry that had a rather large staff. There was actually about 100 people after we had been there for a while who lived in what we called staff housing, which is ministry-owned apartments. So we were all kind of lived together. And so we all knew what we were all doing because we all lived in the same building together. We had our own apartments, but we lived in the same buildings. I saw people who moved there to make a difference in, let's say, the teenagers' lives they would be working with. And they would actually, after living there for a little bit, go for revenge and beat the crap out of one teenager for beating the crap out of the one teenager they were working with. It happens. We become like what we're trying to change. The work of justice is gravely undersourced. So the unmet needs cry out for attention daily. And the ministry culture that we were a part of, one of the things that we would always say is don't call in, crawl in. In other words, you're not allowed to call in sick. Don't call in, crawl in. And the other thing that a lot of people said on staff is when people would come and visit us and they would say, when is your day off? When is your day of rest? They would say, I'll rest when I'm dead. Losing heart was commonplace in this ministry culture. In its unhealthiest state, the staff would even judge each other for being too happy or too positive or not committed enough or taking a day off or not being angry at the injustice enough. When we would have other people come from other parts of the states, we would really judge them harshly with great resentment for not doing enough. We were awful, judgmental critics who serve the God of the need. So good work, like the work of justice, can become an idol. And that's a crazy thing to think about, but it's the truth. Now, an idol, hey Andre, great to see you. An idol actually demands our full attention and sacrifice and demands adherence to strict rules. So when we think about the work of justice and the example I just talked about, a good work like the work of justice becoming an idol, we can't even imagine it. But look, an idol demands our full attention and sacrifice and demands adherence to strict rules. An idol creates a culture of judgmentalism and produces enslaved martyrs. And tragically, we see this kind of judgmentalism, or we can see it, this strict adherence to the rules on social media. In their book, Joyful Militancy, authors Montgomery and Bergman point specifically to the tendency of some activists to partake in what they call, quote, anxious posturing on social media to demonstrate they have the, quote, good politics. For some, this unfortunate need to keep up appearances can lead to an internal sense of, I'm not really, as they say, radical enough. The authors use the term rigid radicalism to describe the type of group culture that can breed negative feelings like shame and anxiety. And I don't know if you've ever felt that while you're doing the good work of justice, that you're being judged by the very people that you're working alongside of. But listen, shame is a killer in the justice movement. Not doing enough, or I was part of the problem, or it took me too long to do something. I remember one time I saw a story on television. It was from a news outlet. And it was this white supremacist Nazi. And he had tattoos. It showed pictures of him before he woke up. All over his body, like these ugly, racist Nazi tattoos. And he went through all this painful work to get them removed. But he had some of them remain on his chest that couldn't be seen. And what he would do was he went to schools and youth groups and all kind. He would go anywhere who would invite him, and he would talk about how racism gets its hold. He woke up and he saw the truth, and he saw what hatred did in his life, and he made a radical change. But he was still in great shame. And there was a man who, and on the news program, it kind of had the two of them talking. And the ex-white supremacist Nazi, he met this man who was very involved in Black Lives Matter. And when he met him, he looked down and he wouldn't look at the man, and he just felt shame, and he oozed shame. And the man from Black Lives Matter, who also was working with kids, said this to him, and I'm kind of paraphrasing. He said, you don't ever work out of shame. He told the man, look up, look at me. You don't ever work out of shame. You work out, and I remember this, he said, real-time truth. That's a crazy statement. It's so good. You work out of real-time truth. And then he goes on and he said, you called out the lies of your past, you made amends, and now you speak the truth today. And he went on to tell this man, shame wants to keep us all in chains, so that we either don't speak at all, or when we do speak, it steals our power. You see, this is a very real enemy in the work of justice. The book Joyful Militancy says, in this context, burnout in radical spaces is not just about being worn out by hard work. It is often code for being wounded, depleted, and frayed. And listen, we judge ourselves and each other brutally sometimes. We see all kinds of fighting between people that are all doing the good work, like Me Too or gun law or all kinds of activists, Black Lives Matter. They kind of fight amongst themselves sometimes. Tragic. Judgment can look like everything from you're a sellout to also the other extreme, like, calm down. You seem so angry. You get more with honey, right? That's also judgmentalism. Again, idolatry. The spirit of racism and supremacy is rooted in judging of the, quote, others. So we need to be very careful, again, that we don't become what we're trying to change, and that we don't, as we said in the beginning, what Galatians says, lose our heart in the doing good. The Maslow Burnout Inventory is referred to as MBI. It's this sort of leading measuring tool. It's a psychological inventory made up of 22 items pertaining to occupational burnout. But I'm also going to look at it as it relates to this doing the work of justice. The creator of MBI, Christine Maslow, says that work overload may not be the most important factor to burnout. She points to additional factors such as lack of control, insufficient rewards, inequity, and conflict between personal values and project requirements. And do you feel that? Maslow, along with another person, Michael Leitner, defined burnout as the index, listen, this is a great definition, the index of the dislocation between what people are and what they have to do. It represents an erosion in value, dignity, spirit, and will, an erosion of the human soul. And Andre, I know you probably feel that in your life as well. You're really out there in the front lines, and you have a lot of people talking at you. So this tension, hey Samantha, great to see you. This tension is a problem that is both cumulative, and cumulative means it's stacked one on top of the other. And it's chronic. It never stops. And for some, their own life's experience exacerbate this feeling. Now, listen to this next part because it's very important with this, with losing our heart in the work of justice. For example, a woman who is not only working in the Me Too cause, but was sexually assaulted by a person in authority herself, and possibly even still experiences sexual harassment. Or a person of color working for racial justice who experiences racism in their own daily lives while they're at work or driving while black. So people that are not just seeing atrocities on Facebook, but actually living it personally are much more at risk for burnout, which is a loss of heart. And then with the justice movement, there is a chronic vigilance, which is the anticipation of a negative event many people live in. Dr. David Williams is a sociologist and a sort of pioneer in research on the impact of racism on health, studies how racism, as he defines it, gets literally under the skin. And he's done numerous studies on how it results in health issues and insomnia and hypertension. Hello, Maureen. Shabbat Shalom. There's a young woman named Evelyn who has a YouTube video, which you can find. It's called Calling in Black. And in this video, she explores the idea of calling in black. She talks about she's a millennial. She wakes up in the morning. The first thing she does is check her phone, where she sees another unarmed black person killed. And she decides she's going to call up work, and she calls in black, meaning it's too much. She went on to say what has been the emotional toll of the constant online consumption of black bodies getting systematically assaulted and or murdered. So we're looking at horrible images every single day, but for those who identify with those bodies, they're the same color or from the same country or have the same sexual orientation. It's much, much worse. Some get burnout and drop out. Others lose their own hearts and become someone else. So the question is, how can we care and cope? How can we care and cope? We know we can. We know there's a way because this is a calling. So how can we do that? The first thing that we see is talk to someone you trust and can learn from. So I'm sure Ashley can co-sign on this, but the Association of Black Psychologists has a directory of therapists that's available nationwide. So if you're fighting through that, that's a good connection for you to find a therapist who you can connect with. If you are fighting through, let's say, immigration issues, that makes you feel very afraid, very isolated, like you don't want anyone to know. Connect with people who are going through similar issues. If you're a woman experiencing gender bias or sexual harassment, if you are from a country or a religion that this administration is vilifying right now, reach out to others who are going through the same issues. This has got to be someone who doesn't discount what you're feeling. And let's answer that question Ryan is saying. Let's ask ourselves this. If you speak with your pastor or rabbi or friends who says anything that sounds like just love people, it's in God's hands. Don't look at the negative. If you share love, then that's all that really matters. Our primary purpose should be Jesus. Don't listen to the news. Let me say this to you. Get out. The very fact that they suggest that means they are living in a place of privilege and they don't get it. And they will never get your work. Form communities. Work together. Share your experiences. Find a mentor, a coach, the kind of teacher you can be a talmudim, a disciple to. It's very important. Hey, Phoebe, great to see you. Shabbat shalom. Number 2. And by the way, if you have any comments on these, please pop them up there and I'll shout them out. Number 2, so number 1 we see is very important. We find people we can connect with. Number 2, this is also important. It's going to be probably the most challenging. Monitor your intake of information. Hey, Glenn, great to see you. Religious microaggression. That's so true, Dre. That's a good term. That's religious microaggression when evangelists say that to you. That is definitely what that is. Hey, Edwin, good to see you. Long time no see. Shabbat shalom. So number 2, monitor your intake of information. So now we all probably are aware about the studies that companies have done where it takes on average 25 minutes for a person to refocus on their work after they're distracted by something like reading an email, right? We've read those studies. Well, imagine the constant shock of reading or seeing these kinds of images every 5 minutes. We're picking up our phones and we're checking Facebook or checking Instagram. It overwhelms us. If you are feeling raw or overexposed, take note. It is your responsibility to protect yourself. And again, we talked about this in the beginning. You can lose your heart. Seek information in a way that allows you some sense of control over how it flows into your life. In other words, you're the one who controls when you let that information come in. And also, let me just throw this out, fact checking. So that your brain doesn't become a dumping ground, that you allow every single thing to come in, and maybe some of it isn't even factual. And then in turn, you spew it out onto others. You're in control of the information you let in. And you must take the time to make sure that what you do let in is factual. And it's your timeline that you look at it. One of the best places I've ever seen this happen is when I was in Israel. Actually, I went with Ryan to Israel. And what I saw really amazed me, because what we see on TV is not necessarily the reality of what it is to live there for the general population. There are religious extremists on all ends of the spectrum there. But most people are not that way. And so we saw in this one quarter, there's this section where people sell all of their things together. The Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, they do business together in this section of Jerusalem. The children play in the streets and they laugh, and you hear all of the sounds of religious observances. All of them. And everyone has the freedom to worship their own religious way. And you'll see the Muslim talking with the Jewish people, and they've known each other for 20 years. And when you talk to them, you'll say, yeah, we are not religious extremists. That's a very small percentage of what happens in this country. Now, having said that, there were bombings by religious extremists on both sides. But the vast majority of the people I saw were not those people. They felt family love and joy and friendship with people different than themselves. But here's the thing I really noticed. They guarded the news flow. They filtered the acts of violence that they literally were experiencing. In other words, a restaurant was blown up. They didn't deny that. But what they allowed to be taken into their heart was not those evil people who are Muslims. What they allowed to be taken into their heart as religious extremists on all ends is dangerous to all of us. See, they had control over how they internalized the violence. Now, I'm not saying all the people acted like that, but what I am saying is that I saw people that lived like that. And those people had joy and didn't have issues with people that were different than them. So it's very important that we do this. Number 3. Which is also important. Am I on the right one? Yeah. Choose your battles and your commitments. So it's not your responsibility to correct everyone. I love what Andre does. Ryan's saying fact checking is important because even if all of the information I take in is truthful, fact checking reminds me that I have the power to accept or deny any information I choose. Exactly. It's very empowering. That's very true. You are deciding what it is that you take in, which is very important. Some people, as we know, when we talk about number 3, choose your battles and your commitments, some people are energy vampires. I have a friend that I am friends with on Facebook, and I love her posts. I read her posts. But she has got some ex-in-laws that make my head explode. And so whenever I read her posts, I try not to read any of her comments. Not her comments, but her ex-in-laws' comments. Because they are these crazy evangelical, those people. And when I'm reading them, in other words, one just posted this yesterday. I just happened to see it before I was able to not see anymore. He talked about the left's call to violence and aggression. The left's call to violence and aggression. Now, we know who he's talking about, but let's put things into perspective. The lack of logic and the total hypocrisy here is mind-blowing to me. But these are people who are trained by their news outlets to do this. They gaslight and they regurgitate things they've been told, and they have no connection with actual facts or any logic or an awareness of the double standard and what they're saying. Now, I'm not talking about people that may have a difference of opinion than me. You know the people I'm talking about, right? And what I'm throwing out to you is that this is a black hole that sucks up your energy. I really like what Andre does. Sometimes when he has a person who posts on his Facebook or on his Instagram, he kind of throws up their remarks and lets his community deal with it sometimes. I love that because it doesn't warrant the energy. The work of justice is a lifelong journey, and we can't afford to be worn out by energy suckers. Not every battle is your battle. And this is not related to working in justice, but we have a family rule that when any of my family members say something, except for my daughter-in-law, because this doesn't pertain to her, because she never does this, but my two sons are my husband, more so my husband. If ever they say something that I would deem at an extreme level of stupid on the stupid scale, I do not respond. I call it the stupid law. Some things are too stupid to take the energy to respond to. And our family joke is, my husband will say something to me, it'll be stupid, he'll be sarcastic, I won't respond, and he responds back, oh, is that the stupid law? Again, we kind of guard what we use our energy with. Classic Donna, exactly. In the book Joyful Militancy, which I referred to earlier, Building Thriving Resistance in Toxic Times, the authors write that joyful militancy is accomplished, and here's the quote, not by adhering to fixed commandments, but by learning to inhabit our own situations in ways that make us more capable. That's so good. In learning to inhabit our own situations in ways that make us more capable. And this is the key. What works for you? It's very individual. This book is arranged around a series of complex questions, such as what makes radical spaces and movements feel transformative and creative rather than dogmatic, rule-bound, or stifling? What sustains struggles, spaces, and forms of life where we can become capable of living and fighting in new ways? See, they get it. Although all of the justice issues are connected by common threads, not every battle is your battle. Not every commitment is your commitment. So let me ask you this. Why do you think this one is so tough for us to say no or for us not to respond? Your battles and commitments are yours, and shame or insecurity or posturing steal your heart. I'm going to wait for your response, and in the meantime, I'm going to go to number 4. Take care of your whole self. Well, you know, I have to do this because this is who I am. Shabazz has a very funny story about the first time that we met, and he came to me for counseling. I didn't talk about the Lord. I didn't talk about anything. I asked him how was his diet. So this is very much part of shalom, of the whole self. Number 4, in order to be and do the work of justice and not lose our heart, is take care of your whole self. Sleep well. Eat well. Don't allow toxins as much as you can in or on your body. Drink water. Get out in the sun. Put your feet on the earth. Stress in this work is present, and you must equip your body to be able to deal with it. Connect to that thing that brings you joy and peace. Evelyn says, the teaching is just what I needed to hear. Oh, good. That's good. I know. And Evelyn does a lot of social work with people as well. Justice is about healing in places of brokenness. So when you intentionally expose yourself to things that are whole, it gives you hope and it heals. In other words, look, when we're looking at all the things that need to be healed and all we see is the brokenness and the big giant holes and gaps, we have to intentionally focus and make space for things that are whole, that do give us hope, that are healing. Read or watch good things. Focus on goodness. Listen to music. Create music. Be around nature, art, community, walking, writing. do these things. And of course, you know, I have to talk about the Sabbath. Everything is designed for a Sabbath. Even the land, the Bible clearly says, leaving a field to lie fallow means leaving a part of the land to be unseeded for a season. It is the best way farmers can allow the land to replenish its own nutrients and regain its fertility. It does all kinds of healing things in the soil to make it healthy for seeds to grow. So the thing is, when this happens in the land, it gives nutrition to trees and vegetables and grass that feeds animals and people that eat all of that. All of creation is designed to need this and function best in the rhythm of Shavuos. Justice work is good work, and it deserves great effort. I'm going to read Aaron's comment. I think it is the hardest because the level of the cultural conversation is so base that this level of disagreement rocks our entire perception of society. The fact that our entire reality is questioned unsettles us to our core. And you know what? Every truth has a giant monster that wants to overshadow it, Aaron. And it wants to either crush it or deny it or water it down or discount it. But the thing is, when you stand in truth, you actually stand in the true power because we know God is with us. But you're right. Everything that comes against us sort of threatens what we know to be truth. That is a very real part of the battle we're in. Justice is a good work, but it can be an idol. And nothing breaks an idol's power like honoring the Sabbath. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote in the book The Sabbath that this day serves as a, and I quote, sanctuary in time. He writes to turn from, and I'm quoting, the results of creation to the mystery of creation. Listen to these words. To turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation. From the world of creation to the creation of the world. Sabbath connects us to wholeness, which is what our hearts are longing for in the work of justice. Here's the most important thing we need to remember. To be mission-centered is to put justice in the center, not yourself. When self is removed, when we look at ourselves as one part of the total work that Yahweh is doing, it's really about Him and His work in this world and about the people He so loves. That frees us. It's not about us. It's not dependent on us. He chooses to partner with us in this work. It's about bringing healing, reconciliation, and wholeness to the world. And that enables us to do the work of justice without losing our hearts. We're going to close this time with the lighting of the Shavuos candles. And again, this signifies the end of the work week. And I'm going to pray a different prayer this evening about the work of justice. We come before you as many parts of a single body. People from every nation, every language, some indigenous, many of us refugees, immigrants, others of us brought as slaves, all of us searching for a place we can feel safe, accepted, and have our home. Let us remember that you created the earth to bring praise and joy, that you gave it as a gift for us to steward, for all of its inhabitants to enjoy. We are all your creation, all of us equally as precious. Help us to remember that the body is made up of many parts, each one unique and every one necessary. Enable us to see what we need to do, equip us to help those we can, and remind us to do this work without losing our hearts. Let us bring your love into the public, for that is your justice. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.